All right, we're back. Sorry, I forgot to record the first 10 minutes. Ask your sister. Go ahead and get those questions out. But before we do, let me just give you a tour of the book that I just gave you, okay? So those of you that were in my class last year know that I was fond of giving you questions every week that are based on our Dorothy Mills books. And if your book doesn't look exactly like mine, don't worry, okay? I will talk about the page numbers in the different books. Just don't worry, same book. If it's Dorothy Mills and it's this title, it's the same book. So what you have in your book are each week's questions, just like I used to hand out last year. And so if you turn to page 1, it says week 1, and it tells you at the top what to read. So this week you will go home and read the Book of the Ancient Greeks, chapter 1 and 2. And if your book looks like my book, it's pages 45 through 67. And if your book does not look like my book, I will explain about the pages. Don't worry about it. There are other things in this book too. There are some things we're going to use for our writing assignments. And also in the back, there are some timelines. You will see, starting on page 69, there are pages that look like this. And we're going to add things to timelines as we go through the year. And then after that, there are some maps of Greece and Italy and the Mediterranean. And then if you go back to page 67, there's a list of all the books we're going to read this year and what weeks we're going to read them, because that was a common question before. What are we reading next, Mrs. Ferguson? And when are we reading it? There you go. Now you know, okay? So that's what's in this book. I will go back and we will talk about this book some more in a little bit, and we're going to use it, so go ahead and keep it out. But let's take a look at your questions and the stuff that you read about before we met. I want to start out by correcting the author. And this is just kind of mean. I just don't like it when I read this. The very first paragraph you read said, to the people of the ancient world, the Mediterranean here was just the sea. They knew almost nothing about the great ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, that lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules. A few of the more daring of the Phoenician sailors had sailed out into the Atlantic, but to the ordinary sailor from the Mediterranean lands, the ocean was an unknown region, believed to be a sea of darkness, the abode of terrible monsters, and a place to be avoided. And then, as they believed the world to be flat, to sail too far would be risk falling over the edge. This makes me so sad every time. They did not believe the world was flat. Only the most ignorant people in history thought the world was flat. This is a common misconception. Early Greek mathematicians proved the world was round. They all knew the world was round. Columbus knew the world was round. All right. No one had an objection, like I said, except the most uneducated, and we would call superstitious people, thought maybe I would fall. It wasn't falling off the edge of the world, but monsters, that was a thing. The monsters we are afraid of. And you know, they do dredge up those enormous squid. Sometimes they find just monstrous things at the bottom of the ocean that we never knew existed. So I'm with them on the monsters thing, you know. But they knew the world was round, but they did like to hug the shore. People in the Mediterranean world, when they sailed somewhere, they didn't really like to sail across if they didn't have to. They sailed around, stay on the coast, and then they stopped at night to sleep. It's like a road trip, right? You drive, and then you stop, and you go in the hotel, and you sleep, and then you get back in the car. They did the same thing with boats. They just didn't like to be on the water too far from land. And I asked you a question about that. First of all, what does Mediterranean mean? That was the first question I asked you. Yes? It means middle of the world, exactly. Mede is medius, middle, and terra means land. Mediterranean is in the middle of the land. Because for these people, this was pretty much all the land there was. It was all the land that mattered. They didn't know about North America and South America, and they didn't know much about Africa because there's a desert in the way. And it was a while before people started sailing south around Africa and exploring. There's mountains over here, so we don't go over there. Plus, there's just nasty people living over there. I mean, by nasty, I mean warlike. They will kill you if they catch you. Yes, over here. And up there, it's very cold, so we don't go there. So this was the world for them. The Mediterranean was the world. And why? Well, because of the desert. They would die. But not till you get through the desert. You see? You got to get through the desert first. In fact, it was years and years and years before anybody followed the Nile to find out where the Nile started. People just didn't know. They had guesses, but they didn't know. So everything was just right here. This was the world for them. And why did they like to, what was risky about sailing on the Mediterranean? Was that the question you're going to answer, or do you have another comment? Sure, go for it. Well, because it's also a desert. And unless you had a guide or you knew where the oases were, you will also die there. Lots of you will die. You will die, you will freeze, you will be killed, you will starve, you will burn. There's lots of you will die. Every direction. It's not north, south, east, west. It's just you will die, you will die, you will die. Did anyone catch from your reading what can be risky about sailing around in the Mediterranean? Yeah. There's currents and there's something else. Did you catch it? Okay, possibly. That wasn't what I was going for, but may happen. Yeah, Rhett. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes, indirectly. Let me see. I always like to find the place that I was fishing for if I can. Hang on. Oh, okay. In the summer, the Mediterranean is almost like a lake with its calm waters and its blue and sunny sky, but it is not always friendly and gentle. The Greeks said that it was, quote, a lake when the gods are kind and an ocean when they are spiteful. And the sailors who crossed it had many tales of danger to tell. Okay, here's some of your bays, currents, and maybe I asked a question that she doesn't right out say. Storms. Storms. And you guys know a famous story, I bet, about a storm in the Mediterranean. The Apostle Paul had been arrested, and he said, I want to present my case to Caesar. They said, okay, we'll do that. And we're going to take you to Rome. And they sailed up, and they sailed to Crete, it says in the book of Acts. And he told them, it's too late. It's almost winter. We don't want to go sailing. And the captain wanted to get back to Italy. And he went anyway. And I'll be doggone, after a lot of this, for a couple of weeks, they shipwrecked on the island of Malta, where they had to spend the rest of the winter. They almost all died. I mean, it was God's grace that, and for Paul, that they kept them alive, that God kept them alive. They had to throw their stuff overboard, all their cargo to lighten the ship. It was a terrible storm. And this was normal. If you set sail too late in the season, good luck with that. You're probably not going to get there. Sorry. See, it's a new school year, and I'm very lighthearted. And so I had you read about two civilizations, two Greek peoples who lived very, very, very long ago, before the people that we think of as the Greeks, with their temples and their gods and all of this. And I'm going to see if I can she? Oh no, she can't. All right, it's hanging, but it's staying. No, we're gonna live wild. We're just gonna hope. The first group of people lived on this big, long island of Crete. So here's Greece. Greece is very funny looking. I think Greece is funny looking. It's very pokey. Do you know it's got a lot of sticking out places? There isn't anywhere in Greece that's very far from the ocean, right? You don't have to go very far anywhere to get to the ocean. But there's this island down here. And I asked you who Minos was. That was my next question. Did anybody write down who is Minos? Yes. Yes, okay. Did everyone hear? He was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, and the king of Crete, the leader of Crete. And thereby is a story. Once upon a time, there was a girl, and she's pretty. She was a princess. And she was hanging out. Oh, I took my map down here in Phoenicia. So if you go around the coast, just north of where Israel is, she's just hanging out with her ladies, having a picnic, I don't know. And Zeus sees her, and Zeus is always on the prowl for pretty girls, which ticks his wife off to no end, and it should. And he spots her name's Europa, and he says, I like you. So for some reason, he thought it would be attractive to turn himself into a bull, a big one. I've never been quite sure about the strategy. Zeus likes to turn himself into weird things to attract women. So I'm just going to be and wouldn't you wonder if a bull just showed up out of the ocean? I don't know, maybe Europa wasn't very bright. I don't know. But so the bull comes up, and she just, and what's the first thing you do when you see a huge bull? Oh, aren't you no, you run the other way. Well, she says, oh, aren't you sweet? And she's petting it. And it's just, like a house cat. It's just nice. And so she said, I think it's a good idea to just get on its back and ride it. Don't ever get on wild animals and ride them. So she does, and it just takes out swimming. It just starts swimming. What did I do with my map? Yes, it's just this is a very alarming story if you think about it. So it's over here, and it just starts swimming, and it swims her all the way to Crete. This can't have been comfortable. This is the first thing I think of. This is not first class travel. And so when they show up in Crete, anyway, she ends up having a son, and his name is Minos. All right, so the story goes. And Europe gets its name from Europa, who was brought there by Zeus. So the story went, and I'm saying the story because for several thousand years, people this is all we knew about Crete. There was a king named Minos, and he ruled, and he built a big fleet of ships, and eventually a ravaging, a different bull, not the Zeus bull this time, was sent by gods though. This one was Poseidon, and it was ravaging the countryside, and it had a child, and the child was half bull, half man, the Minotaur, and it eats people. And so the king said, oh, we can't have that. That's the king's job, right? Put the half man, half bull people in prison so they don't eat people. So he did. So he had an architect, and he said, build me a maze, build me a dungeon, build me a maze. And so we'll put the Minotaur in the middle, and we'll just feed it people. Not just any people, prisoners. And they'll go in, and they'll go through the maze. They'll never be able to find their way out because it's a maze. Have you ever been in a corn maze? I can't even do a corn maze. I would die. If there was no Minotaur in there, I would die. I would never find my way out. But eventually it would get, the captives would get eaten. We'll read more about this story later in a few weeks. But this is all we knew about Crete.
And the labyrinth.
Yes, and that's the labyrinth. The maze, they call it the labyrinth. And why did we, that's the next question I asked you. Why do we know so little about Cretan life and Cretan religion? Okay, they didn't leave any stuff for us to examine. Temples, idols, that sort of thing. There's one other reason. Yeah, Dalton. We can't read their writing. If you think about it, if somebody lived a long time ago, there's only really two ways we can know anything about them. We can read what they wrote, or we can go through their garbage, frankly. I mean, that's what archaeologists do, right? They go through the garbage, kind of, the broken stuff, the thrown out stuff, the ruined stuff. And they didn't give us stuff to go through that would help us, and they didn't give us writing that we can read. And this book was written a long time ago. When I was in college in the 1980s, and I was studying about this, they still couldn't read it. As far as I know, it's called Linear A. You have to remember that or write it down, but Linear A, and we still can't read it, so we don't know. Yes? I think there should be if there's not. I don't know, maybe one of you should grow up and devote your lives to Linear A. And then give me a call when you're, and when the press interviews you, say, it's all from Mrs. Ferguson's class. No, you don't have to do that. What were you going to say, Rhett?
Where did all this come from?
Well, for many years we didn't find it, but it says that we don't know a lot about their religion, and MK nailed it, that they didn't leave idols and temples. Okay, so they didn't leave religious stuff, which doesn't mean they didn't leave some sort of trash. And in fact, we're going to look at some trash here in a minute. But and this is all being recorded for posterity. In the 1800s, a man named Arthur Evans, Sir Arthur Evans, who was British, he decided to go to Crete and he started digging things up. And this was back in the day. They weren't really careful about digging things up. Today they're very careful. When they go and they dig up an old city, they don't just, with a shovel and just start spreading things around. They're very careful and meticulous, and they map out the site so they know where everything is. Back then it was like, Raiders of the Lost Ark, with the guys on the mountaintop and they're just digging with the shovels. That's what it was like. So Arthur Evans went in there with his guys and he was digging, and they started uncovering things. And they uncovered, first of all, well, actually, I'll show you this first because it's just shocking. This is the floor plan of the palace. The capital is called Knossos. This is the floor plan of the capital, or the palace. Can anybody say labyrinth? Oh my gosh. Okay, first of all, I'd also starve in the palace. I would never find my way out. These are the walls of the palace. And everybody just freaked out. Oh my goodness. Do you mean there really was a building on Crete that was maze-like, that had rooms and paths everywhere? Here, I will, don't spend forever looking, and try to listen to me too at the same time. But it was unbelievable. And they started saying, oh my goodness, maybe some of these old stories have something true in them, all right? Then they started uncovering, as they uncovered the walls, some of them were still painted. The Minoans, we call these people the Minoans from King Minos, all right? And they like to paint their walls, what we would call murals. But what they would do is they would plaster it, and when the plaster was wet, you paint on the wet plaster. And the paint soaks in, and it makes sort of muted colors and sort of like a watercolor effect. And we found a bunch of these. Here is, this is actually not a wall, it's a sarcophagus where you bury somebody in, made of stone, but it's painted. I'm gonna send this one this way for you if you wanna take a look at it. And they actually uncovered a whole room painted with these beautiful designs. And I actually took this picture. This is in the National Museum in Athens. And I was privileged to go see it in 2019 with one of my children. And I've seen this in books, and my son just tapped me on the shoulders like, Mom, turn around. It's the wall. And this is what the walls look like. It's all very swirly and obviously flowers or plants or something like that. But the fresco that freaked everybody out is the one I'm about to show you. So while those go around, let me remind you that I just told you about the story of Europa getting on Zeus the bull's back and swimming. And I told you that they had a legend about a half man, half bull thing. Well, for full effect, I'm gonna wait till the pictures go around and then I will show you this one. That's awesome. You have no art, what? Where's your artistic sensibility?
Yeah.
I think you should all, I was gonna say you should all go home and paint your bedroom like that, but please ask your parents first. Don't just start painting your bedroom and then say, Mrs. Ferguson told me to do it. Please don't do that. It does. And you know what we found out later? We find Minoan pottery in Egypt. They were sailing back and forth. We know they were trading and sailing back and forth. They were sending olive oil to Egypt and importing things. Okay, so is everybody ready for my big reveal? If you've got a picture in front of you. So this one's smaller, unfortunately, because the resolution wasn't as good. They found a fresco of people playing with a bull.
Oh, that's like,
You've read about this, haven't you? So we don't know. We only have this picture. But I'm gonna pass it around so you can see. It's kind of blotchy because some parts have been, are you not sure which direction it goes? Oh, okay. Some parts have been reconstructed. But when you pass it around, look, in front there's a person standing, facing the bull. And then in the middle there's a person on top of the bull upside down. And then there's a person in the back. And so exactly what you're saying. We think, but we don't know because we don't have any writing, to describe it. It looks like some sort of sport where you jump, you have a charging bull and you jump onto its back and, okay. But you know what, in Spain, people run in front of a bull every year. People do wacky things. And circus performers can do some pretty amazing things standing on animals. So, I don't know. But they found this and they thought, oh my goodness, there is something going on with bulls and Crete. And we've had these stories for thousands of years. And we thought they were just bosh, just nonsense. Maybe not. Now, do I really believe a girl got on a bull's back and swam to Crete? I personally don't believe that happened. Do I believe a half man, half bull thing was eating people? I don't personally believe that happened either, but something happened that spawned the stories, right? And because they're based in reality, because we found the stuff, which is just amazing, which makes you wonder what other stories that we think are just bosh have some fact underneath them, as a foundation. Maybe we'll find out someday. I don't know. I hope so. So that is Crete. So could you guys turn in the backs of the guides I gave you to those timelines? Here, let me tell you what page it's on, okay? Let's turn to page 69, okay? And it should look like this. It's got a 2000 BC at the top and a 1500 BC at the bottom. Did everybody find that page? Page 69? I'll wait till everybody is there, okay? All right, so what I'd like you to do is get a pen or a pencil out, if you don't already have one, and we're gonna put the Minoans on our timeline, okay? And here's how I'd like you to do that. Unfortunately, you can't just pick one date because they were living there for hundreds of years, right? So yes, sir. Well, we're going to answer the other couple of questions if you want to wait till we've got. Have we answered all the questions? Oh, no, it's fine. You can put, if you remember the answers, it's fine. So I would like you to draw a little line at the top like this. Okay, this is almost like art class now. And then I'd like you to come down here to right above the 1500 and write 1450. And then I would like you to join these two lines, okay? Like that. Does that make sense to everybody? And then inside it, well, you can either write it inside, or you can just draw a little line and write Minoans. If you want to be fancy, you could turn your page and write it in the rectangle that you made. Here, am I in your way, Rhett? Am I in the way of the people at that table? So they have an ending. And you might wonder, well, what happened to them? Where did they go? Well, that's a really good question. Dorothy Mills tells us that they got invaded, which is certainly true because some of their buildings were broken down and burnt down. But for 100 years, it was a period of 100 years or so, they just seemed to be less people there. They seemed to not be doing well, you know, not building new things and not repairing old things. And for a long time, people thought, wonder what happened to them. But as they kept doing more work in Greece, archaeologists, they visited this island right here. And you can't see this very well from where you are, but this island is called Thera. It's called Santorini today. And apparently it's quite the honeymoon getaway. I don't know, it's quite upscale. It was called Thera back then. And it's shaped like a crescent roll. It is shaped like a crescent roll, very much like, here, I'll draw it. My former students know my drawing abilities are okay, basically that looks like the moon, okay. And there's a little dot here, and there's a little dot here, okay. That's what Thera looks like now. It used to be round. A volcano blew out the whole middle of it. And guess, well, I don't think it's blowing anything out anymore, but guess when it blew up? And look how close it is to Crete. And so when volcanoes erupt, if you're on them, that's bad. If you're in the way of the lava, that's also bad, if it's a lava sort. If it's not a lava sort, and it just, you know, blows steam and gases and everything, it still can affect the atmosphere. So when I was a little girl, I lived in Alaska, and while I was there, a volcano erupted. And it erupted, it was 150, 200 miles away from the town I was in. But I remember getting up in the morning, it was a Sunday morning, and I was very interested in Jesus coming back. I mean, not that I'm not anymore, but I was very intensely looking for Jesus to come back at the age of 9. And so and there was a green and blue cloud in the sky, and it wasn't a normal cloud. And so I went in and I told my mom, I'm pretty sure Jesus is coming back now. Don't think we need to go to church. So, but they went out and they checked the weather, or checked the news, and a volcano had erupted. So we went to church. When we came out, ash was falling on the city. It was winter, there was snow, and it was like brown or gray, more gray snow. And they warned us, if you have bronchitis or emphysema or some breathing problem, you don't want to go breathe that in. Don't breathe in any more of it than you have to. Yes, it's not a good idea even if you don't. Don't just go suck it in. Don't eat this snow. It's not good. So this, if it's a very big volcano, this was a small one, okay? And it snowed ash for like the day and the night, something like that, and it was done. And there was just a layer of gray stuff on all the snow for a while. But if it's a big one, if it blows out the whole middle of an island, the amount of ash sometimes makes it so the sun doesn't shine. You don't really get the sun, and it can last for months. And if the sun doesn't shine, what happens to the food you're growing? Nothing happens to it, right? It doesn't grow, it just sits there. It dies. You don't have enough food. The ash falling on your ground can affect the fertility. And I personally think, and I'm not alone, a lot of scholars, historians think the eruption on Thera was a factor in the civilization on Crete falling apart. They just didn't have enough food. I mean, it may be wrong. Maybe somebody did just come in and whop them and take all their stuff and kill them all. But Yes, oh yes, exactly. But you know, if you're already weak, if half your people have starved to death, then if an invader comes in, you're easy prey, right? Right? That's probably what happened to them. So that is the story of the Minoan civilization. And leave your timelines out. Don't, I didn't tell you that before, but, so just to remind us, can you also add something up here? Put a little line and write Abraham. This would have been the time of Abraham, just to kind of put it in perspective. When Abraham was traveling to the promised land that he was never going to own, and Joseph was being taken to Egypt, and then they were enslaved in Egypt. That's what's happening. At the same time, these people on Crete were apparently jumping over bulls and having a lovely time. Until the volcano erupted, and then it wasn't so lovely anymore. All right, that's the Minoans. The other people I had you read about were the Mycenaeans. And I asked you, answer this question, how did Henry Schliemann become famous? What's his claim to fame? Yeah. He found Troy. He was an archaeologist, and he found Troy, and he also found something else. So, Troy is a city right up here. And there's a famous story about a great war, which I'm not going to tell you the details of because we're going to read a whole book about it next month. All right, so you you'll find out all about this war, more than you ever wanted to know about this war, okay? But the Greeks banded together under their king Agamemnon. Each city had its own king, but he was like the chief king. He was the king. He got all the Greeks together and he went and they attacked Troy. And they spent 10 years attacking Troy for various reasons that you will find out about later. Actually, I still don't know why it took them 10 years. I guess we will not find out. And everybody knew about this war and this story. We have known about this story probably for well over 3,000 years. And a man named Homer wrote 2 long poems about this war and about the travels home of all the Greek heroes. And everybody read this in school and learned about it and said, what a nice story that is. Everybody but Mr. Schliemann. Mr. Schliemann said, that is so true and I'm going to find it. I was like, you're nuts. It's not true. It's a made-up story. So he had 2 goals in life. 1, make a boatload of money so that I can retire early, and then do number 2, which is go over there and find Troy. Number 1 worked out great. He made a boatload of money. And then he headed off, holding in his hand the poem, right? I'm going to read the poem all about this war that nobody thinks even happened, right? And I'm looking, and it says there's a mountain. Oh, I see a mountain. Oh, it says there's 2 rivers. Oh, there's the rivers. And he follows the directions in the poem. And he finds a place that he's pretty sure is the right place. And he starts digging, and I'll be doggone, there's a city there. There's a city there that was burned down right when the Trojan War should have happened, if it happened. Unbelievable. Once again, a story that we thought was just malarkey. It's a nice story, but we didn't think it was historically true. Turns out there was a city there, and it did get burned down at the time that the story says. So Mr. Schliemann was not done. He said, I found Troy. Betcha I can find the king's capital, King Agamemnon, the guy who led all the Greeks to Troy. If they're there and they exist, I bet these guys exist too. So he goes, and they knew the site, roughly where it was, of the city of Mycenae, home of King Agamemnon, who led the Greeks to Troy. And he starts digging around. First thing he finds is huge stone walls with a gate. This is called the Lion's Gate. It's got, they're headless, unfortunately, but there's like very big cats at the top. Those big cats are 9.5 feet tall. All right, so these are each way taller than a human being. So that gives you an idea. I'm not going to pass this one around. You can come up and look at it later. Gives you an idea how big the stone blocks must be. This is an enormous wall. I should hold it up here for misses. This is an enormous wall. They call it the Lion's Gate, and they referred to this architecture as Cyclopean architecture because it's so big that the monsters called the Cyclops must have built it. Because that's the only person who could lift those blocks. You know. So he finds this. He finds a tomb. The tombs were like upside down ice cream cones, you know, like cone shaped, like pyramids only rounded. And he digs into this tomb. And it's chock full of gold stuff. I mean, full. Like some of you may have seen pictures of the King Tut or seen the, not quite to that extent, okay? But everything is gorgeous, solid gold. He brought his wife in. He dressed his wife up in the jewelry and took pictures of her, because why not? And he found a golden mask. This is not the golden mask. This is just a copy. I did get to see the real one, though, when I was in Athens. It's incredible. And Mr. Schliemann, because he was just so into this story about the Trojan War, he announced to the world, I have found the mask of Agamemnon. And so, was it Agamemnon's mask? No. And by the way, you might say, how did he wear this mask? Because it has no eye holes. It wasn't for wearing, it was for when you're dead. And then you don't need to see, right? Because you're dead. So just like in Egypt, you know, they would put masks on people and then elaborately put them in the mummy in a sarcophagus. They did that in Mycenae. They would drape the deceased person in their finery and then put a golden mask. Only the upper class, not everybody got this treatment. But whoever this was who got this treatment must have been somebody important. And so he announced to the world, I found the mask of Agamemnon. And the world went nuts. Oh my goodness, another story that we thought was just nonsense. At best, maybe at some point, somebody from Greece attacked somebody over there, maybe. No, these people really, really lived. And we call them the Mycenaeans. So you have your timelines out. The next, so if you turn the page, you have a page that looks like this. It's 1500 BC up here, and it's 1000 at the bottom. So let me make sure I got the right dates I'm telling you. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is come back to the first page. This is tricky. We can do this though. And draw a line right about here and write 1600. Draw it fatter, draw it farther out than your 1450. And then I want you to draw a line straight down to the bottom of the page. And then you're going to go to the next page, and you're just going to start the line. I don't care which side of the line it's on. And just keep it going all the way to about here and write 1100. Does that make sense to everybody? They're overlapping a little bit. So we had one drawn. We're going to 1600 and going down. And then our 1600 is going to keep going on the next page. And we're going to label those people I can take this down there. The Mycenaeans. If you don't spell it right, do not worry. It's got a lot of vowels. It's got too many vowels. They also eventually disappeared, and we're pretty sure people just came in from the north of Greece and said, we like what you have and we're taking it. Sort of situation. We're going to knock your buildings down and burn your crops and just move into your houses because we can, because we have weapons and we're stronger than you. But eventually they disappeared, and when they disappeared, several hundred years followed where they didn't write anything. There was no writing. Oh, and by the way, we did figure out how to read the Mycenaean writing. It's cleverly called linear B. we can think of another name. And we can read linear B, but it's very boring. It's just lists of inventories. It's like a shopping list, or you know, if you had a warehouse, if you were an Amazon fulfillment, you know, and you did inventory, it was a list like that. 1,200 sheep, 500 bars of gold. It doesn't tell a story, so it doesn't really give us much. I made those things up, by the way. I don't know what was in the list. So we don't know anything helpful about these people, but something bad enough happened. Somebody bad enough happened that they stopped writing for 400 years. And you know, if you think about it, if all you're trying to do is stay alive, you don't really have time to write anything down. You know, you don't journal when you're about to die. Maybe if you're on a desert island and you're starving to death, you keep a journal, throw it in a bottle. You have nothing else to do. But in general, if all your time is spent hunting, keeping warm, staying alive, you don't spend a lot of time writing things down. That's a luxury we have. It's a luxury people who live in prosperity and peace. We have time to read and write things down. They didn't. So for several hundred years, we don't really know what's going on. We have archaeologists have found things. We see pottery. They made very pretty pottery with designs, geometric designs on them. But we don't know a lot about what was going on because they didn't write down anything. And by the time we see people in Greece again, and they start writing again, they are Greeks. They are the people we think about, the people who built temples and worshiped Zeus and Hera and all of these things. And that's what we're going to spend this semester talking about, those people, because that's the people we know most about. But these people are Greek too. They came before. We don't want to leave them out. Okay. Did we go over all? Was that all the questions? Oh, I guess I answered the last one myself, didn't I? What happened to the people in Mycenae? They apparently got taken over. And they either joined the conquerors or they got killed. We call them the Dorians, the Dorian invasions, but we don't really know who the Dorians are. It's just a name we give people who came in. Interestingly, in Egypt at the same time, there were people attacking Egypt. And there were people attacking the coast by Israel. There's massive peoples moving around, taking over new places. All right? So next week, you are going to you're going to keep reading in this same Dorothy Mills book. And this is a good time to talk about those page numbers. Yes, sir. Yeah, you know what? So here's what I want you to do. Everybody go to page 1 in your guide again, okay? And if you have your Dorothy Mills book, go ahead and get it out. And if you don't, it's fine. And in fact, if it looks like mine, you don't need to look at this, but if it doesn't look like mine, this is for you, okay? So you know you already read a bunch of this book, the beginning part, right? And if you look in the table of contents, all of you, you will see that the beginning part I had you read, it has a preface and then it says Crete and the civilization of the early Aegean world. And then it had section 1, section 2, section 3. And we read all of that. And then it starts over again. It says the Greeks, chapter 1. That's why I'm telling you you're going to read chapter 1, because you might say, wait a minute, I already read chapter 1, but this is, do you see there's a new chapter 1? That's exactly what you should do, yes. So if your book, can you hold your book up? Just yeah, show everybody your cover. Just, all right. So, and turn it around. So if anybody behind you, oh yes, because in cases like yours. So you guys, don't look at the page numbers. Just look at the chapters. And that's on the top of your page too, okay, each time. But if your book does look exactly like mine, the page numbers will be right for you. But don't worry about it. But when I say read chapters 1 and 2, I don't mean go back and read the ones we already read. I mean underneath where it says the Greeks. And the chapters are called The Land of Greece and Greek Religion and the Oracles. Okay? Are we good? So you're going to read that and then you're going to answer the questions that are in your book. Also, before you close your books, see, you're so fast to close your book. Before you close your books up, we are also going to start reading this book, Greek Myths by Olivia Coolidge. This, I think Europa is in here. The Trojan War we're going to read about in a completely different book. These are stories about Zeus and Hera and Aphrodite and Ares and all these crazy gods and stories about them that we're still telling today and apparently still writing into country music songs. Yes. Is it going to be like, no. You mean story inside a story?
Not necessarily like that.
Yes, it's just a collection of stories. But the Arabian Nights, was kind of wild. Yeah, no, it's not like that. It's separate stories, but sometimes the stories mention each other because the same. Yes, it's just a series of stories. It doesn't have one plot. In the very beginning of your book, right after the table of contents, there is a list of gods. It says the older gods and the younger gods. Don't worry about older and younger. But it tells you what they're the god of. So if you're reading and you just can't remember who's Apollo again, what's his story, you can look in the front if you want. And it will tell you that Apollo, also Phoebus Apollo, god of the sun, god of prophecy, god of poetry and song. His symbols are a golden chariot, a golden lyre, a golden bow and arrows, and laurel. I feel like they needed to hire another one. He had his job description is really huge, isn't it? A lot of things going on. And then some of them only get one. That's not fair. Yes. No. This you're just going to read and enjoy. And here's what you're going to read. You're going to read this week pages 3 through 66. So you might want to write that down. You could write that at the top above the week 1, just to remind you. Pages 3 through 66. Well, you can write anywhere you'll remember. But my idea was that if you wrote it above the questions that say week 1, you would see it right away because you'll open this up to do the reading, and then you'll see, oh, I'm also supposed to read Greek myths pages 3 through 66. And if it sounds like a lot of pages for you, if you're not used to reading a lot, or if some people just read more slowly. It's not a moral failing to read slow, and it doesn't make you virtuous to read fast. We're just different. But just know that this book has pictures in it, and it has chapters that don't, the break between the chapter is just blank page. So it's really not that much. And I predict once you start, you're going to enjoy reading them. They're kind of fun. They're just really weird. Yes. Oh, can I record you saying that? I should put that. You know how they put, like recommendations on the back of the books? We should put that on there. Yes, it's very interesting. And the interesting thing is, well, actually, I will save that for next time. I will tell you what I think the most interesting thing of all is next time. So far you have 2 things to do for next week. You are going to read the Dorothy Mills book, and you're going to read the 3 through 66 in the Greek myths. You're also going to write something for me. And so in your, actually, can I just look over your shoulder? Can I see? Did you just take all the pages out of the book?
Yeah, I put them in mine. So
Okay. My book isn't good enough for you?
No, it's more confusing.
Okay, it's all right. I'm teasing you. But see, I've known you long enough now. I can tease you. So in the notebook, actually, it doesn't apply to this one because I have what we're going to use for your writing here. But I also let's see. Do you see how the backs are blank? The questions are just written. That back isn't blank, but a lot of it is blank. This is places for you to write things down, write assignments down, all right? The first 2 writing assignments are in the book for you, but later on, when I give you a writing assignment, here's a place to write it down, and then it's all in one place for you. Does that make sense? So everybody, though, let's turn to pages 2 and 3 in your book. Now, how many of you would say, okay, raise your hand if you agree with this question. I love to write and I'm really good at it. It's okay to agree with that.
I agree with the second part.
Okay, but you don't love it? Okay, well, I guess you can be good at something you don't love. That's legitimate. Are you agreeing with that? Yeah, okay. So maybe, or maybe in between, because how would you agree? I don't mind writing and I'm okay at it. All right, this is, okay, and this is just true confessions. I really hate writing. I really don't like to write. Would you agree with this? Anybody? Okay, well, maybe we can do something that will make you not hate it. That's setting the bar kind of low, to not hate it. That's how I have a son who watches movies, and he gives reviews to me, and he says, well, I didn't hate it. This is not really good, is it? So let's see what happens. Yeah, I see why there's a bottle of stuff here. I will use the stuff, but if you don't mind some blur, this has not ever been a very good board, honestly. I wonder, probably. I know somebody did. I'm sorry. I sound very ungrateful, don't I? We are going to tell a story back. Now, you guys who had me last year, you did this. Just FYI, everything we did last year, not the same assignments, but the same sorts of things, we're going to do it again this year. So if it was easy for you, then do better. Like, make it more fancy. Make it more fancy? Wow, and I'm going to teach writing. Make it fancier. All right, and I can give you hints about that. Maybe I will write on your papers, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? But for those of you who haven't had me before, this may be new, but have any of you ever used the Institute for Excellence in Writing at home? You don't count. Oh, yes, with keyword outlines. Have you done this before? Okay. So we're going to start off very easy because some of you have done this, some of you have never done this, all right? But we're going to make an assignment that everybody can do. It won't be hard, all right? Even if you secretly deep down were in the I hate writing and the corollary and I don't think I'm very good at it, all right? It'll still be okay. So on those 2 pages, you see a story and you also see an outline that looks like this. I'm going to make one up here so I can use it. If I am ever standing in the way and I am writing and you can't see it, please say so. Also, if I start writing too small, please say so and I will write bigger. I tend to write low down because I'm so short. I'm going to read the story to you and we are going to retell this story in our own words and maybe add something to it. And by the way, I chose this story because it is an Aesop's fable. Have you read some Aesop's fables before or heard that name? Aesop was a Greek slave. He was Greek. And so that is why I chose Aesop. Also because he has fun, short stories to do. The Wind and the Sun. The wind and the sun were arguing about which was the stronger. Suddenly they saw a traveler coming down the road. And the sun said, I see a way to decide our dispute. Whichever can cause that traveler to take off his cloak shall be regarded as the stronger. You begin. So the sun retired behind a cloud, and the wind began to blow as hard as it could upon the traveler. But the harder he blew, the more closely did the traveler wrap his cloak about him. At last the wind gave up in despair. Then the sun came out and shone in all his glory upon the traveler. The man soon found it too hot to walk wearing his cloak. The sun thought, kindness works better than violence. This just popped in my head. Can you think of another proverb that means the same thing as kindness works better than violence? It involves flies. Do you know this one? You can catch more flies with, they're looking at me like that. Than with what? Than with vinegar. You can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, which doesn't really have anything to do with catching flies. It means, although perhaps that is, I suppose that is true. I've never seen flies swarming on vinegar. But the idea is if you're kind, if you offer people something they want, something desirable, you can win them over more quickly than being nasty to them, which is pretty true. Okay, so we have 3 paragraphs we're going to write. Did you notice that the story I just read was 1 paragraph? It was all in 1 paragraph? We're going to divide it into 3. What is a paragraph? Very nebulous question. How would you define a paragraph? Okay, so it should have a certain number of sentences, but so when I get to a certain number, do I just start a new paragraph just because I have enough sentences? What's my reason for starting a new paragraph? We don't know, do we? And you know what? You're not alone. Most people don't know. Did you notice in our Dorothy Mills book, there's all these nice paragraphs. Notice how she indents, right? Goes a few spaces in at the beginning of a paragraph, and then she did it again, and then she did it again, and she did it again, and they're not all the same length. This one's quite short, as a matter of fact. It's just these few lines. So why did she decide to make a new paragraph? I will tell you. She started a new topic. She started talking about something slightly different. Whenever we start talking about something a little different, we start a new paragraph. And all our sentences in a paragraph ought to sort of go together and be about the same thing. Does that make sense? It's a little different when we're telling a story. But even in our story, each of our paragraphs is going to have a purpose. And the purpose is written next to your outline there in your book on page 3. The first paragraph is going to tell us the characters and the setting. In other words, who are these people? Where are they? When are they, if we want to? Okay? Our second paragraph is going to ask what happened in the story. What do they want? Is there a conflict of some sort? You know, I could write a story. I think I told you this story last year, but you'll have to listen to it again. Once upon a time, there's a girl named Sally. You remember Sally? And she got up, and it was her birthday. The sun was shining, and the little birds were lined up on the windowsill, and they were all singing her favorite song. She got up, and her mom made, I don't know, bacon and waffles because that was her favorite thing, and they had ice cream. They had cherry if they wanted it, and good flavors if they wanted. And she had all her little friends over, and they played games in the park, and the sun shone all the time, and the little bunnies and squirrels came and played with them, and everybody was so happy, and they went home and they had pizza with all her favorite toppings, and she went to bed at the inn. That is a boring story. Oh my goodness, I'm happy for Sally. Well, there has to be a conflict, doesn't there? Well, blood and death might be a little extreme in Sally's case, but it would be good if something happened to cross Sally. Maybe the sun started melting their cherry ice cream, you know, and they have to deal with that. That's a very small conflict, honestly. If that's the worst thing that happens to Sally, that's not so bad. But most stories are very boring if nothing bad happens. Well, let's just face it. No. Okay, Matthias. Matthias is quite, I was going to say vicious and violent. I shouldn't call my students names. Oh my gosh, it's the first day. No, you're very adventurous. We're going to say that. But our second paragraph, we want to know what the conflict is. What do they want? What do these characters want? What do they need? Okay? And then if we left it there, that would be a horrifying story, wouldn't it? Hey guys. Matthias. If we gave them a conflict, if their house burned down, if their village got pillaged, I didn't mean that to rhyme. If very bad things happened and we just said the end, that would be a horrible story. Can I tell you a secret why I think that's a horrible story? And some of you will understand what I mean and some of you won't. It's a horrible story because it's not a true story. Because the true story is our story. It's the story of God. and the universe, it's the story we're in, and it has a happy ending. Oh, it's got bad stuff in it. It's got really bad stuff in it. But the real story that we're in, it does have a happy ending. We're just not there yet. So our stories, I'm not saying everybody has to be perfectly happy at the end of every story, but somehow the conflict has to get solved, right? The conflict has to get solved, because guess what? The conflict is already solved on the cross, and when Jesus comes back again, it will all be solved. And so that makes it a good story, all right? That makes it satisfying for us. So we need to wrap it up. How do they solve the problem? You don't have to write these down. These are, I'm paraphrasing what's already on there. Or what happens to them, all right, in general. Okay, so let's start out. We are going to ask ourselves questions about this story out of our own minds to fill in our outline. So tell me somebody who's in this story. Yes, the wind. The wind is in the story. Tell me something about the wind. Now, yes. He's cold. He's cold. I like it. He's cold and heartless. I like heartless. See, this already sets the tone for our story. And do you notice the story did not? Yes,
And
okay.
the sun was warm and welcoming.
Oh, okay. Oh, and it alliterates too. So, listen, we're getting excited. So, we start at the beginning. Do you notice that we are adding things that we just made this up? It's not in the story that I read. That's okay. It's so okay, because this is now our story. We are going to turn the story I read into your story that you're going to retell. If you want to add details and you want to embellish, and you go right ahead. Because that story honestly didn't give us very many details, did it? It was just a very bare bones plot. But we're going to add in if we want to. So sure, we can have the sun be warm and welcoming. Oh, and Owen, right? Oh, Owen, yes. Yes, if you do not want to write down what I am writing, you can make up your own adjectives, okay? You can make up your own. But go ahead and write it down as we're doing it, because this is what you're going to use. This is going to be your assignment this week. And yes, what is your other question? I'm sorry if I
Are we
went.
doing this because it's like a Greek tale or something?
Yes, because Aesop is a Greek slave. He was a Greek slave who made up the story originally. That's the connection. So the sun is warm and welcoming. Who else is in this story? One more character. He's a traveler. He could have a trailer. He's a traveler. Okay, so you want him to be young, old? He's old. He's old and weary. Oh man, I feel sorry for him already. He's old and weary.
And injured.
Where is he? Okay, I'm not going to add that to the outline, but you just pile hardships on this traveler. You go for it. Oh, where would you like these people to be? Oh, people. There's only one person. Where would you like this guy to be traveling? Where's he traveling? What's the terrain like?
She's traveling to that one.
Well, let's.
We talked about earlier about supposedly there's a
Oh, he's on Thera? He's on the volcanic island of Thera? Oh, that's very specific. How about if we, hey guys, remember how it echoes in here when we all start talking? If you want to put an actual geographic destination in your paper, you go for it. Let's focus more on, is he in the woods? Is he by the beach? Is he in the mountains? Where would you like him to be? Put him in the desert of all the places. Okay, I'll buy that. Okay, so there are trees trudging through the desert. Why is he in the desert? I have no reason to deny that, I guess. Okay, hey, to visit family. He's in the desert to visit family because maybe his family are, maybe he's a family of genie, like from Arabian Nights, yes. He's he's going to an iceberg. See, if you want to do different things, that's great because I will read all your papers and it makes it more interesting for me. If not everybody's traveling in the desert, but it's fine to use this. If this is the first time you've ever done something like this, you can just use this outline, okay? We're going to do another one next week, and after you're kind of used to how it works, maybe you want to mix it up a little bit and add some of your stuff. But if you want to do that this week, that's fine too. What time of year? It doesn't matter in the desert? Rainy season. Does it matter? Isn't there only rainy season in? Is this the only season, dry season and rainy season, and it's mostly dry season? Now I want to come up. So we have who, where, when. When is? Yeah. What season? Day or night? Let's go with that. It's day. Oh, it has to be day. It has to be day. Red's got a good, although this could happen, this could start in the night. The wind and the sun could be conversing on the other side. I don't know. I think it has to be day. It's the hottest, I'm going to say it's the hottest day of the year. You can make it whenever you want. Tropical, okay, yes. Not really tropical in the desert, but we're not going to be picky. We can go with whatever. Okay, so we have characters and we have a setting. There's a problem. What is the conflict? What is the debate? Who is better? That's the problem, right? The wind and the sun are having an argument. Wind and sun argue. Did you notice how I'm not really writing complete sentences? I'm just picking a few words that will jog my memory and help me remember what I meant. It saves me time. If I wanted to write the whole sentence out, I might as well just write the paper. But this is just getting ideas out of my head. And they're arguing about who is stronger. What are they going to do about it? How are they going to decide? Excuse me. They're going to have a contest. Okay. They decide on a contest. And what does the contest entail? What is the contest? What are they both going to try to do? Blow his cloak off. Okay. I'm going to give us 4 words, okay? Blow off. No, we can't say blow off. Take off. Thank you. Because the sun isn't ever going to. Remove. Oh, and then I don't have to use of. Remove travelers. I did this yesterday, cloak. Does traveler, is it one of those words that it can have 1 L or 2 L's? That's got, I think it is. I want to give it 1 L, but then I don't want to be a bad example. I think it might be one of the one that swings either way. Are they gonna, what's the winner get? This is not in the story. Because it's not really, what does the sun or the wind want? Yeah, okay, so, yeah. Okay. See, I always have that trouble. I read too many British lit, and then I can't spell anything. Can't spell color, any OR word. I got U's coming out all over the place. Okay. So, winner gets bragging rights. So that's our paragraph that tells us about the conflict. What's going on? What do these characters want? What do they each need? And now we're going to find out how it gets solved. Every time I come over here, I realize I'm not on my camera anymore. I don't know if it really matters, but I'll come over here. So, who goes first? The wind. And what's he trying to do? Okay, so the wind blows. Oh, let's think of a good adverb. How does he blow? He blows violently. Okay, you can pick whatever violent word you want. I was going to say whatever adverb you want. The wind blows violently. And what is the result? What happens when he blows violently? Okay, so it makes the traveler hug. I'm going to use the word hug. You can hug his cloak, all right, or wrap his cloak, right? Wrap it tighter. What does the sun do? The sun shines and warms him, right? What, Eeyore? E-E-Y-O-R-E. I'm not sure why you're writing the word Eeyore, but do you notice how I will tell you how to spell anything, no matter. Okay, the sun warms up the traveler, and what does the traveler do? Takes off his cloak. Traveler removes cloak. You can, but if the symbols aren't common, do you know what I mean? If you don't think that you will remember what they mean, we can't, yeah, you can't just draw a little, like stickman on the caveman's wall. No, but yes, absolutely. So when we use numbers, thank you for bringing that up, or symbols for things that are, so you know what, if I wanted to, here's a good example. I could do this for sun. My marker is losing it, but can you see? I'm just drawing a sun. Everybody knows what that means. Yes, then you could have an extra word if you wanted to. I'm being a little bit, I'm going to let us have 4 words when we want to. Mr. Pudawa might come and get me. I don't know. I don't think so. And so what is the story supposed to teach us? What is the moral, we would say, of the story? Kindness over violence. There we go. Kindness over violence. Or greater than symbol. Oh, yes. So we could use the greater than symbol. Awesome. So now we have our story in an outline, and all you have to do is go home and turn it back into complete sentences, right? You can move the statements around a little bit if you want to, but I'm going to pretend to be you now, okay? This is my outline, and I went home, and this week I'm sitting down and I looked at my outline, and I've got paper out and pencil, or you can type it if you want to. I don't care. You can type it, you can write it. I would like it to be readable, right? If your handwriting is really bad, then it's very nice if you would do it neatly as you're able for me. If your mom is good with you typing, that's fine, but I don't mind reading your handwriting, okay? So this is what I would do. I would go home and I would look at my outline, and now I'm going to turn it back into a story. Here's my story. One day, the wind was blowing through the desert. He was howling through the desert. He was, despite the heat of the desert, he was cold and he was hurt. And he was just looking for something to blow down and destroy. As he was traveling, he ran into the sun, who was always warm and welcome. And the sun asked him what he was doing. The wind said, well, since it's the hottest day of the year, I was just trying to blow through this desert and give people a little relief from you, sun. See, because they don't get along. While they were talking, they looked down and saw an old, weary man trudging through the desert, step by step. Unfortunately, his family had chosen to live in this desert, and every time he wanted to visit them, he had to go trudging through the sand dunes. Now, did you notice how I included everything, but I picked things to include whenever I wanted to in my paragraph, right? I don't have to do this, then this, then this, then this, then this. Does that make sense to everybody? I don't have to do them in this order. So here's my next paragraph. While the wind and the sun were talking, they got into an argument about which one of them was actually stronger. Instead of arguing for the rest of the day, they decided to hold a contest to find out. Since they saw this traveler, why is he wearing a cloak in the desert? Well, we don't know. We're just not going to worry about that. Oh, I shouldn't say this, I guess. Old people do get cold. You know, they like to have it be really warm. Yes, do you have an idea? Oh, sunscreen. Thank you. He would be burnt to a crisp, by the way. I feel much better about his cloak now. Okay, so back to my story. They decided to have a contest. Looking down, they saw the poor old man who was still traveling towards his family, hoping to get there by dinner time. And they decided to see which one of them could remove the man's cloak first. Since the wind and the sun don't really need anything, they couldn't bet for money, but they decided that the winner would have bragging rights for the future and be able to call himself the strongest of the elements. Okay, now my turn. The wind took his turn first. He blew as violently as he could and swept down on the poor old man so hard that he almost fell with his face in the sand. But instead of taking his cloak off, he just wrapped it around him still tighter because he was afraid of sunburn. He tried and tried. He would get cold too because he was cold and heartless. And you know what? I hear that at night, in the desert can get quite cold. People can get hypothermia in the desert, illness from being too cold. I know. Well, you can change that if you want to. So, okay, I'm continuing my paper. It was the sun's turn next, and he shone down on the traveler with all his might. Sweating profusely, the traveler decided to risk sunburn, and he removed his cloak. The sun got bragging rights for the future and also showed us that kindness is more powerful than violence. You see how I did that? Now, you're going to go home and do that. And you don't have to use my same words, but you've got the whole story here. And if you don't want them to be in the desert, don't use the desert. Put it in a forest. The original story didn't tell us where they were, so we have the power to put them where we want to. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you feel like that's something you can do? For some of you, this is just laughably easy. And for some of you, you've never done something like this before, and you might think, oh, I'll write a whole story my first week. Wow, and it's due next week. But you can, all right? For those of you that find this very easy, we will move on. But by October and November, I'll be giving you things that are a little more challenging and different, okay? Yeah. Right. Any questions? So that's the third thing you're going to do for me this week. You're going to, I guess I will. You're going to read out of the Dorothy Mills book, and you're going to read out of the Greek myths book, and you're going to write the story and bring the story to me next week, and I will collect them. And then we will do at least one more of these stories for next week. And See, I went really short because my clock is gone. It's only 10, but I'm trying to think of what we can do without having a free-for-all. Did anybody go any particular interesting place over the summer that you'd like to talk about? We have about 10 minutes. Usually I end up going over, in case you're wondering, and they're scrambling out the door, so I don't know how I did it so fast. Yes, where did you go? Oh, you moved here from Louisiana. So how do you like it? Is it still going to take some getting used to? So Louisiana is very hot, and I'm assuming it's very humid, very damp? And is it more humid?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So I'm sorry if this is probably the stupidest question you've ever gotten, but have you been in snow in the winter? Have you traveled and been in snow? Like, oh, okay. So you haven't always lived in Louisiana. Okay, well, welcome to the Midwest. And when did you just, like June or July? How long ago did you move here? Oh, okay. So you've had a couple of months. Very cool. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoy it here. That is a big thing to do over the summer, to relocate. Anybody else have an exciting summer adventure? And was there a destination in Tennessee? Were you visiting family, like the Traveler in the Desert? I bet there was sun. Where did you go? West Virginia. My family, I went to South Carolina. I've never been to the Southeast. I got to go through the Smoky Mountains. And we went on a, say again? Oh, Florida. I've been to Florida once when I was a teenager. But I'd never been to South Carolina, North Carolina, and through the Smoky Mountains. And they took us out, we got on a boat, and they took us out to an island, and we found fossilized shark's teeth. It was so cool. I have a little jar of them. We had a guide to show us how to find them. And then we found out later, so we were in Charleston, and if you know about American history, you know that Fort Sumter is right off the coast of Charleston, which the South, when they seceded, they took over Fort Sumter, which was a government fort, and Lincoln and the other federal people in Washington, D.C. said, you can't have that. And they said, oh, well, you come and get it. And which they tried to do, and they started bombarding Fort Sumter. Anyway, the island we were on, it was uninhabited. It's where the Union set up their artillery to bombard Fort Sumter. And occasionally they find cannonballs there where Fort Sumter was returning. I know, it was. I did not find a cannonball. I did find some shark's teeth. And there were dolphins. There were, in the channels, there are like a special kind of dolphin that isn't out in the ocean, and they were just jumping around by our boat. It was just amazing. And my husband and my son took surfing lessons, which was hilarious. Oh yeah. No, he's not attacking dolphins. Well, I'm going to release you to your own, well, I'm not supposed to let you out of this, I'm not supposed to let you out of this room until 10 after. That sounds very ominous, doesn't it? I'm sure I can tell you more, well, no, we've kind of, that ship has sailed. I'm not going to drag you back and tell you more about Greece. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn the video off. I'm sorry.